Bob, would you go ahead and introduce this evening's speaker, please?
Yes. So, Andriy, welcome to our club. We're really delighted to have you here tonight. Andriy is a W9KM. That's his U.S. call. He's also a UR3AN from the Ukraine. So I know Andriy from the Metro DX Club, which is in the Chicagoland area, and I also know him on the air. I hear him quite frequently. He's active on CW and in digital modes from 160, I think, up into the VHF bands. He's I think he's a software engineer. Is that right, Andriy? Software engineer. Yeah, and he's located down in Naperville, a suburb west of Chicago. And I think he's got some interesting things to tell us about how he came up in the Ukraine through ham radio, and his knowledge of what's going on there now. So, Andriy, please go ahead and share with us.
Thanks, Bob. Thanks a lot. Thank you, Metro DX Club, for having me tonight. Let me share my screen. And oh boy, yeah, I think this is the one. And here is my presentation. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Great, thanks. All right, thanks for the nice words. I'm relatively new to the area. I got my extra in 2017, and before that, maybe a couple of years, I was hanging in a technician and a general. Technically, I moved to US in 2000, and I lived in New Jersey. I was out of ham radio for a while. Then I moved to Canada. I spent 4 years in Nova Scotia. I got my Canadian citizenship also. I move through the world, I follow my work. So if my work requires me to be there, I usually go somewhere. And I started ham radio in Ukraine when I was in a school. I was like 10, 11 years old. And when everything started, it was quite popular and quite exciting to be able to hear someone really far and to be heard. And I tried to follow my hobbies through all these travels I did, but unfortunately not everywhere it's possible. And I'm glad that here in the US I'm able to operate and be heard and participate in many contests and other events. So what I want to say about tonight, that's technically about the situation with ham radio in Ukraine, how it was before, and what happens now, and what kind of difficulties ham radio operators see today, and how world reacts on everything we know from the news. So couple words about Ukraine itself. One of the biggest country in Europe. Has several prefixes from UR to UZ, EM to EO. That's a special prefixes for call signs. The little secret, if you see the second letter of three-letter prefix, it will be Y or Z. It's usually club station. So it's really easy to distinguish. Also, Ukraine has like 17,265 amateurs out of 49 million population. It was 2015 or 17's data. Technically, it's a 15th place in the world by ham radio population. In the XCC list, it takes place number 332 of 340 most wanted. So technically saying it's not wanted at all. So plenty of ham radio apps in Ukraine, and it's kind of popular, and everybody works them. It's really interesting how Ukraine achieved all these numbers. Well, I'll try to explain in my next couple slides. Couple words about myself. If you see on a map of Ukraine here on the left, the city of Sumy circled around. That's where I'm from. And as you see, the Sumy is maybe closest city, one of the major cities or oblast centers, which are borders with Russia. So technically 25 kilometers from Sumy to the border with Russia. We, as a club, as a city, have like oldest amateur radio club in Ukraine. It was 95 years old a year ago. So call sign is EM80A. And I will tell a couple words about it also. That's one of the cards from this club station, 95 years old. As you see, there is a picture of club members, like in 2078, I think. There was lots of members there. And on the right, you see maybe a handful of people who stayed right now in the club. But it was mostly popular because one of the Sumy amateurs, Nikolai Lashenko, U5BH, silent key right now, he was able to establish first of the kind, like communication between USSR and Australia. And it was in 2029, October 1st, and it was QRP, QSO, 3 watts transmitter, 20 meter band. So it was quite exciting to have it. And on the right, you see the actual transmitter, which used for that. And I should say that it was like on a verge of solar cycle. So I'm really looking forward to see a propagation like that, maybe in a year, when we also reach our solar max. It will be quite interesting to see that. Also, Sumy, well known for their UR3AN club. Lots of QRP enthusiasts work from there, and they are members of QRP RC. It's World Organization of QRPers. Other activities which are kind of popular in Ukraine. Well, first, of course, Ukraine UHF Activity Day. Of course, Ukraine participates in all the contests which like famous and widely popular, like CQ and others. But there's something which is like special to Ukraine and countries around. That's, for example, these activity days. It's very much similar to our American UHF contests, except that there is no rover category. I think that you're supposed to like take a place and you're supposed to work from that place all the time. As you see on the pictures, it was the activity day which was happened like in 2020, I think. We set up in a place, it's a rare square. As you see in the picture on the left, there is a yellow field in the left bottom corner, farm field, and forest behind this field. And this forest is actually Russia. So we set up like in 2 miles from the Russian border. It's rare square, and when the border control came to us, they said, guys, you know that we are in intentions with Russia, so you really want to be there? We said, yeah, why not? Well, they said, if they have any problems, tell us, we will come over, help you. It was like, as I said, it was 2020, and it was 5th year since the tensions started, since all this Crimea annexation and DNR, the Donetsk Republic, Lugansk Republic started to appear. So it was not a good times anyway, but we decided to take our chance. We put 2 masts, 2 meter and 70 centimeters antenna, and we also put a flag on top of it just to make a little statement. On the middle picture, you see Truly Yours hanging on a mast. I'm trying to set up this antenna. And it was a successful contest, successful activation. We did lots of QSO. We had lots of fun. Another interesting activity which Ukraine is kind of popular, it's intramural radio championship. It takes place usually outside It's little version of WRTC, this once per 4 years contest, which this year I think happens in Italy, where like teams come and compete who's the best ham radio op and the best champion. This is like a really small version of it. You have technically a chair, as you see on the left top picture. Chairs located maybe a couple 100 yards from each other. Lots of people participate. You have to bring your own station, battery, key, microphone, and basically you work on a dummy load. There is no antenna. So since everybody sits nearby, usually dummy load, it's enough to transmit and to hear each other on QRP on the field. So competition takes maybe 30 minutes, 15 minutes per round. There are one round of CW, one round of phone, and it's usually 15 meters and 2 meters. So it's really fast pacing, quite exciting, and people are having fun. And usually you like calculate scores and you have competitors, champions immediately, and you have awards. So another really nice contest for the summer. Club stations. Almost every oblast in Ukraine, had at least one club station. So in Sumy, it was UT7 AXA, one of the biggest. I was one of the first like students in this club station. Usually club stations are, it's not like clubs for people to come, they more oriented for youth. So usually it's open in a school or in a university somewhere. People bring equipment, and they usually try to involve as much as possible young people, school students, kids to participate, to learn Morse code, to take basics of ham radio operation, this all these advantages and all the fun things which can come out of it. First and most interesting, it's the XX fox hunting. As you see on the pictures on the left, there is kind of old picture, maybe 15 years old. And the kids on this picture, they already grown up and have their own kids, but it's still interesting. Kids really like to do DX and receive QSL cards. Every QSL card is like very precious. That's what I did. Look, guys, that's mine. That's my QSO. And the guy talked to me, and I replied. And also fox hunting, picture on the right. I think that Ukraine got like 3rd place in the world, maybe 2 years ago, I think, or 3 years ago, on the World Championship for fox hunting. So they're also quite popular there. Another interesting activity, it's of course contesting. You don't need to be like extra smart to participate in any contests. Usually like RITI or phone, it's very low level entrance to the contesting. And after you understand basics and you have a good teacher, after a couple tries, you usually can start participating and achieve some results. And of course, you can get rewards. You have diplomas, you have awards, you have medals, youth on air. So yeah, usually older kids bring their like smaller ones to at least to sit and see what happens there. And it's also like a big positive moment. Kids love to be in companies and look what their elder kids doing, and it usually helps a lot. All these things help it to achieve the numbers which I presented on the first slide. So yeah, the kids starting to participate, they grown up and continue doing these things. Everything, unfortunately, went to a stop on February 24, 2022. That's a picture from the webcam from one of the major intersections on a Sumy. And you can see on a road the column of the Russian tanks moving from the left to the right. As I said, Sumy is just 25 kilometers from the border, less than 20 miles. So technically for the tank, it's like 40 minutes, maybe in an hour, to cross the border and get to the city. So the Russians came and they went through the city fairly quick. And on this picture, if you can see this if you can see my mouse, this little red building, one of the high rises on the left. Behind that, the house where I lived and where my parents live right now. So everything is very, very close to me. What should I say about that? From the very first days of the invasion, amateur radio was banned in Ukraine, technically. You're not allowed to operate. You had to cease all your activities, take down your antennas, and stuff like that. After maybe a month or so, when a decree was made by a president, another decree was made. And the second one was like shifted all the responsibility to each oblast in Ukraine. So each oblast decide by themselves if they allow to ham radio ops to work, or it will be a continued event. So technically, the places which were under occupation, like parts of the Sumy Oblast, Kherson, all the south, of course, Donetsk, Lugansk, they were not allowed to operate. But places like Lutsk, all the eastern part of Ukraine, western part of Ukraine, I'm sorry, the ban was shifted, and you probably start hearing Ukrainian ops starting maybe from midsummer through the fall and until the next year. So I should say that if you made any QSO starting from March last year until now, they are legal. They are completely legal QSOs. You might get a confirmation, you might get a QSL, or maybe a logbook of the world. And just keep in mind that ham radio operation in Ukraine is still, it's a big deal. It's under heavy risk. Ops usually close to the occupied areas are risking their life. First months after the war started, ERU came with regulation and advice that if you hear any amateur radio transmitting from Ukraine, keep in mind they're risking their life. If you hear Ukrainian station, do not broadcast its call sign, location, or frequency in band, cluster, or social media. It might be putting lives at risk. If you noticed also on QRZ.com, every QTH exact location of Ukrainian station currently is withdrawn. So you won't be able to see any exact location or address of Ukrainian stations. It was made, I think, for purpose. Not everything was removed, unfortunately. It's really difficult to take anything from internet. But hopefully it helped. And I can explain you why. Basically, any towers or any antennas you have are highly visible, right? Especially if like 80% of Ukrainian population, they live in high-rise buildings, the one like you see on the left. So basically you have antennas installed on the roof, like here on this picture. And of course it's visible remotely, and antenna usually says that, yeah, somebody lives there, and probably not very poor individual. You can come there, loot, and take off all this equipment and maybe something else. Also, if you are hanging with HT in your hand, you can be considered as a combatant or artillery spotter by both sides. So it doesn't matter who you are or what you do. It's also another kind of risk. Especially last winter, it was huge power outages. As you all know, that Russia was not able to achieve their targets from the very first couple of weeks. So they decided to start war of attrition and start shooting on power stations, transmission lines. And if you had like electricity for 3-4 hours during the day, you would be extremely lucky over the winter. So that was the reality of ham radio ops in Ukraine that days, and today's also. So excuse me. If you hear ham radio operator, keep in mind that probably it is like wire antennas hanging somewhere between the trees. It's not a huge power, and maybe it's temporary location also. Is it dangerous? Yeah, another little example. On this picture, you see Sergey UX1UA, contest call sign UV5U. He one of the founders and owners of Rig Expert company. That's the company which makes antenna analyzers, most famous product. Very rigid. You might probably somebody might have it. My personal experience, I dropped it from the roof of my house and it survived. So really, really, really good thing. But anyway, he is the president of DX Club of Kiev, the capital of Ukraine, and the contest club. He has almost 500,000 QSO under his belt. He lives in Gostomel. It's a little city near Kiev. And the Gostomel name should click something for those who follow politics and the news from Ukraine. That the place which were taken by Russian invaders as a special location to jump on, like drop from airplanes and try to take it, and then attack Kiev from it, because it's a convenient place, an airport with Antonov airplanes there. So they got like a first hit in very first hours and minutes of the war. So that Sergey's QTH, that's his antennas before everything started and after. And his house was looted, burned by Russian soldiers. The picture has a little dog sitting here in the middle. Dog refused to come with Sergey and his family. They basically, like when they started hearing explosions, they dropped everything, jumped in the car and ran away. The dog decided to stay, and it was shot by Russian soldiers a couple hours later when they arrived. So yes, it is dangerous, and you probably, if you hear stuff like that, if you hear that the enemy is nearby, you better like drop everything, just run away. That's the best advice he can give to you. Amateurs do their part, technically. They do not stay aside, they defend their country. They donate their skills, donate their equipment to Army Forces of Ukraine, territorial defense. Couple of words, what's territorial defense? Basically, it's like armed militia, like regular people who given arms, and they protect their neighborhood along with the army, maybe a little less organized, but still defending, and quite effective, I should say. Territorial defense, one of the forces which prevented Russians to completely take over the Sumy. The Sumy was circled, surrounded, but never taken. And Russians end up like defeating back to across the border. Another things amateur help a lot. They intercept enemy communications, DQRM bombers net. That's really interesting thing. Russians still use communication equipment from last century. They use unencrypted radios, at least on the very beginning of the war. In frequencies around 60 meters amateur band, you can hear bombers CW nets. So when the next air raid planned or started, they usually some activity around 5.8 something megahertz. There are specific frequencies you can see in the reference section of my presentation. But technically, yeah, this is a plain code Morse, and amateur radio ops, they tried to QRM it, and were being so effective that finally forces of Ukraine came with a statement saying, guys, thanks a lot for your help. We see that you're doing. but please stop, because if you QRM, they have to change the frequency, of course, jump to the second one, to the backup frequency, and it's really difficult to actually to follow them and understand what they have to. So they decided to at least stop on this. Also, ham radio apps provide intel information, the spotting enemy movements, tanks, gun dumps, and stuff like that. Ham radio apps help establish communication, especially in events when, for example, air raid and there's some destruction and unfortunate events when cities get under fire, houses burning, and people are injured. So usually ham radio apps, along with the special services, step up and help to resolve this. Also help army and territorial defense, electronic warfare, drones interception, encrypted comms. The last but not the least, they spread and send a message to the world that, yeah, we are alive, we are active, and we are doing whatever we can. I have several interesting pictures which have been sent to me. I'm, as my many other friends here, we help a lot. We donate money, forces, and try to help people who left there. One of the items which have been donated, it's one of the first Starlink stations which had been given to Ukraine. It was given to artillery division from Sumy. And on this picture, you will see on the left, it is sitting on top of the Starlink antenna. As you probably all know, Starlink antennas are getting warm during operation, and it's particularly appreciated by cats, especially during the winter months. They really enjoy sitting on top of it, and, because it's warm and cozy. Well, unfortunately, they have to be removed during the communication back and forth because they prevent of doing it properly. But after that, they always return and they just decide to stay. Also, guys made some sort of portable Starlink stations. Here you see the bags which have been made by volunteers. You can see they can put your Starlink antenna, cable, maybe the station itself, put it on your bag and just go to the fields and have internet available for you. And the internet is, of course, it's ears and eyes of modern army. You cannot do any decent coordination without internet right now. Also, picture on the left, this is Motorola portable antennas donated by people from different clubs and around the world, I should say. Also on the right, there is a DMR antenna for, I think it's 70 centimeters band. DMR is a protocol of choice of Ukrainian army these days. It's widely available. It's technically, it's not a plain transmission, it's encoded. And equipment is also highly accessible. Hytera, especially Motorola, things like that can be bought, sent to Ukraine, and army uses it. For example, this is a tower, one of the military tower, and you see how busy it is. Lots of cable, lots of antennas, microwave antennas. I'm kind of not even close to guess what kind of antennas they are, but part of them also delivered by volunteers from across the world. On the right, you see the Hytera radios, and on the back, there is empty container from HIMARS multiple rocket launcher, one of the also equipment which been donated by NATO countries and the United States in particular. What amateurs do these days? Basically, in the first days of war, when ham radio operation were not allowed. This is a club station, which I mentioned at the very beginning of my presentation, UT7XA. Kids started doing masking nets. So that's basically, I don't know what the exact like English word for this thing, but basically it's a net. When you put a little piece of material on it, like white color, you can usually like bring it with you if you go on a raid somewhere in the forest, put it on top of yourself, hide on the snow, and you won't be invisible. So that's popular between army folks. And as you see, there is a white masking net. On the right picture, there is a green one for the summer. So kids technically spend time doing these nets while ham radio operation were not allowed. And the little picture on the right, you see a little drawing on the top. It's translated as fox hunters for fox fighters. So that's from Fox Hunting Club to the Ukrainian army. What we see 1 year later, as I said, it's a war of attrition. Still dangerous, raids every day, missiles, kamikaze drones, artillery shelling. For example, Sumy region gets shelled like almost every night. And it's not like heavy shelling. It's maybe 10, 15 shots here and there. So you won't be able to sleep. You usually need to go to bomb shelter. You spend your night there. Next night it repeats. So it's usually highly unpleasant. Most Ukrainian hams cannot leave country or go to the air, visit exhibitions because of martial law. If you are younger than 60 years old, you're supposed to stay, and you can't leave the country. Many popular contest stations has been destroyed, relocated, or just blown up. Many amateur are currently in the army fighting or already lost their lives. Despite that, Ukraine will participate in WRTC Italy this year. I think it should be in 2023. Preparation right now going on in Italy. And of course, many countries decided not to participate for obvious reasons, because Russians are there. They try to present their insignia, push their propaganda, but Ukrainians will, I guess, participate. And a couple examples. Of course, you can hear that amateur radio is out of politics, but here I came with just 4 examples of like amateur radio diplomas came up recently in Russia. Not just guys, random guys, but well-known clubs like CW Russian club. That's sort of like the same as CW Ops here in the United States. On the left, you see a diploma to support Russian Air Force. You can see like destroyed Ukrainian airplane here with all this insignia and the huge red rating that we win. And the diploma on the bottom, that's for taking the Zaporozhye and Kherson regions. That's especially for this event. This diploma was issued. On the right, on the top, that's diploma for Donetsk and Lugansk People Republics. And the very interesting diploma on the top, on the lower right corner, that's for QSOs with a member of FSB. FSB, it's a former KGB. And people joking that, yeah, KGB members around the world, you can get like several QSOs with them and you'll get this diploma. So yeah, I'm not sure about particular rules, but you can get it if you want. Another 2 interesting things, diploma on the left, this huge red Z character, that's supposed to be diploma for taking of the Sumy region. If you see the background of this diploma, it's a little map. And Sumy is supposed to be right in the middle of that Z. Unfortunately, it didn't when it was planned. Summit was not taken. So this diploma was never issued, but it was planned. Diploma of the Right, it's one of the most popular and well-known. It's 7th anniversary of unification of Crimea with Russia. And I think that this diploma is actively distributed right now. There are special conditions to take it. We need to make QSOs with stations in Crimea, and we can get it. I should say that when the Crimea was taken from Ukraine, and also this Donetsk and Lugansk, most of Himridi ops decided not to support this movement. But of course, there were some people who decided, yeah, it's probably a good idea, and registered their Ukrainian call signs with Russia. They got special prefixes and special call signs, and they try to operate, but unfortunately, these places are not considered as DXCC entities, so they cannot send QSO cards, guide confirmations. And technically, if you operate with them, it would be considered as working with a pirate. So how amateur world reacted on all these events? You probably heard that lots of mature societies canceled or limited participation of Russian, Belarusian operators in their contest. CEPT, IOTA, CQ Magazine, UBA from Belgium, Poland, Lithuania, Slovenia, Ireland, Australia, New Zealand, Japan, UK, Czech Republic, and Denmark. They do not accept Russian members as scorers or as contest participants. Very interesting activity from one gentleman from China, BH6KOK. I think his name is Li. He says that until war is over, every day I will do CQUR 30 minutes per day and work Ukrainian stations. I try to do the same if I can. I usually do it in digital mode, and I do not work Russian or Belarusian stations. And prefixes like D0 or D1. That's prefixes which have been assigned for Donetsk and Lugansk Republic. And as I mentioned before, Russia assigned prefixes R1H, R1V for Kherson, and R6S, R7S for Zaporizhia. Honestly saying, I never heard any station with these prefixes, so looks like that's probably all what I want to say for you today, guys. If you need more information, I highly recommend the book written by Vlad Gurtovi. His call sign is US7IGN. You can get this book on Amazon. It's maybe, I think, $9. It's a sort of diary which been published last November, and it just goes through the very first days of war every day. What happened in Kyiv, what happened with people there, with amateurs, with ham radio. And I took like lots of information from this book. It inspired me to do this presentation. And of course, you can get more details from there. Also in the references section, you can see all the links to the materials which I used during this presentation, all these little bits of information. You can dig deeper if you're interested.